We are currently going through, for want of a better word, a bit of a golden age in terms of 18 to 21-year-olds. So by way of a consumer base, there are more people looking to go to university. I think having hopefully got through COVID, obviously it's been a rough couple of years for everybody, but in terms of the student market, it's been resilient. So international students are still coming. We're still a popular place to come and study in the UK. And I think students or young people are saying, well, what's my option as an 18-year-old? Is it apprenticeship? Is it a job? Is it university? And we're sort of seeing a lot of those students saying, I want to go university as my next option for the next 3 years. Asia is still a good market. So there's still a lot of Chinese students coming over. There's a lot of Indian students coming over. I guess they are the two biggest cohorts coming internationally. As a sector, it is now very much, it's very a mature sector now. So I guess one of the challenges that I think is on the horizon for, student accommodation across the piece is that universities have got first generation stock, which is probably tired, probably isn't meeting the ESG agenda. And I guess by default, the PBSA stock is very much second, third, fourth generation, and has much more to offer. So I think there's been a shift towards that. And I know I'm sort of going slightly off piste as this conversation, but I think as we look ahead, there's probably an even greater need for the universities and the PBSA providers to have a conversation, because I think there's a very interesting piece in terms of stock and what's being offered. If I was to look across the country and across the universities, the cities that we have stock, we have some incredible relationships with some universities. So that is a good relationship at the moment. And you either have the conversation that they will take nominations of certain rooms at some of our sites, or they will work with you as a provider and say, we will let students know that, we recommend you as an option for them. There are other cities where that is less of a case. And I think, I was having a conversation a few weeks ago that I think every year, if you went pre-pandemic, there would always be a university who through clearing would ring you up and say, hey, I need 200 rooms. I've got extra students this year. What have you got? And it may not have been us. Sometimes it was, but there'd always be a PBSA provider that said, sure, I've got a couple of 100 rooms for you. I can fit you in. It's not the case this year. I took a phone call through clearing from one university sort of saying, in London it was, I'm looking for 200 rooms, don't suppose you've got anything. And it's like, well, from one point of view, fortunately, I don't, we're full. But that's not going to happen going forward. So I think that conversation with the universities has to happen earlier to make sure we don't have any sort of repeats of universities not having rooms. We've had instances this year, or we've heard that Liverpool University hasn't got enough beds, so they're looking for rooms in Preston. York again this year is looking at Hull. We've got Bristol again, shipping students in from Newport and possibly Cardiff. So if we can get that conversation right, I hope we can get a good solution for all involved. There's a little bit of supply and demand. I think what we offer is a range that says you can go, well, if you're not coming to us, you can go student halls, university, but like I say, that stock is quite tired now. You could go HMO, you could go private landlord, but again, that has its challenges of what you're getting there. We put a product out there from sort of more value for money products to more bells and whistles. And I think from the stats that we see and in terms of how that market or the customer reacts to it, then it's giving people a choice and they can make their own decisions from there. Given utility prices at the moment, PBSA currently is an all-in price. So I guess previously, if I go back to pre-pandemic, we would normally, probably January time, we'd normally do a marketing campaign that would match up why PBSA over an HMO. And that is all-inclusive bills, but it was probably more about high-speed Wi-Fi, communal areas, facilities. I wouldn't be surprised if this year we'll run that promotion, but that'll be about all-inclusive bills. I think on a student level, yes, you've got a bit of mould, yes, it's cheaper, but, an open-ended, what are my utility costs going to be? I think there is a very big opportunity in terms of PBSA now in terms of being that all-inclusive price. As an operator of a number of sites, we have some buying power. I think we work with suppliers that we can negotiate a good price with. I think short term, if you look to 12, 18 months, I think the PBSA operators have had some buying power and have got sort of some stability. But I guess that's a very big question at the moment as to what will happen utilities going forward. Let's try and stay positive about this, but everything, especially over the weekend, there was a lot of talk about, the Bank of England last week was sort of saying we've got the deepest recession coming for the next 2 years. There are clearly some challenges over costs on the horizon, and it's just trying to mitigate those where we can. If you had the conversation, what is cost of living doing to the business for us at CRM at the moment, then I think everyone's sort of talking about or thinking about, well, what are their costs and how does that affect them? So for us as an operator, then I guess we have a very simple model. We get paid for operating that site. So you can imagine at the moment that if suppliers are putting up their costs, whether that be security staff, maintenance staff, cleaners, lift contracts, or even if it be the utility companies, everyone's feeling that pressure. So our clients are saying to us, how can you control that cost? And it's what you don't want to be is squeezed in the middle. So I think there's an ongoing conversation that I would hope, and it is usually a fair conversation, but how do you make sure that everyone, when costs are tightening up, sort of feel comfortable as to the role they're playing, and there's fair recompense for it. If you looked at what's happening in the sector at the moment in terms of opportunity, then I think HMO, there's a lot of stock been retracted from the sector. So again, it's often, it's been on the news a fair bit. I think a couple of weeks ago it hit the national press that students in Durham were queuing overnight to go to the estate agent to secure their accommodation for the year ahead. So I would hope there's not a bit of a panic of that. But over the last couple of weeks, there's certainly been a fair few headlines about, is there enough stock? I think that's driven by private landlords. If you're going to do buy to rent, that isn't the investment it was or it has been for the last few years. So I think some of that stock is coming out of the market, which again sort of says there's probably sort of room for PBSA can sort of take some of that ground up. But I think city by city, there's still got to be an understanding of what the appropriate price is. So again, there's a lot of stats that we look at, and there's quite a few companies that will provide quite a bit of data as to what's happening. And often in a city, you can sort of map the average price for a private landlord against a PBSA, and usually you'd expect there to be there's a part of those two graphs that lap over. And I guess in that situation, the market is probably providing all the products that is needed. So if you want to go value for money, you then can have a choice if there's an overlap, and if you want to go high end. In some cities, those graphs are often a bit further apart. So that's sometimes the challenge as to when there's not that middle ground. So there is opportunity there, but I think you still need to be aware of making sure you get the price right, because we know in anything, even in our private lives, there's no point having a great product if it's not the price that people want to pay for it. It seems to be, I think, across the whole sector, from what I can understand from speaking to other operators, then it's been a very good year. We are back to pre-pandemic levels. I think your figures are often sort of skewed a little bit from where you have stock. I guess pre-pandemic, there'd always be a market, there'd always be a city where I guess supply and demand didn't necessarily match up. But from what I can see across the sector this year, it's not so much by location, it's just probably by site. So there may be a few sites that have struggled, but no, we are back to pre-pandemic, and I think the sector is pretty buoyant at the moment. Demand is good. We've got more students wanting to come to university, and that's not just a domestic market. I think the UK, despite its challenges through Brexit, is still very much a desired destination. We still score very highly in terms of that table of places that people would want to go and study and how they're viewed. I think the future is rosy.